Here's what most people never tell you. Some of the most deeply gifted individuals walking through this world have spent their entire lives believing something is fundamentally wrong with them. Not because they lack confidence, not because they haven't tried hard enough, but because the very qualities that make them extraordinary, their depth, their sensitivity, their relentless inner searching, are the same qualities the world has spent years telling them to quiet down. That's the tender paradox at the heart of what I want to share with you today. Because giftedness isn't always found in test scores or visible achievements. It lives in the nervous system. It lives in the way you process a piece of music, a difficult conversation, a moment of injustice. It lives in the quiet intensity you've carried your whole life without ever having the right words for it. If that resonates with you, stay with me, because something here might finally feel like coming home. Sign 1. You absorb the emotional atmosphere of every room you enter. The first sign is one that many deeply sensitive and gifted people recognize immediately, yet rarely have words for. Before a single word is spoken, you already know whether the person across from you is carrying something heavy. You sense the tension beneath a polite smile. You feel the subtle shift in energy when someone is pretending to be fine. Psychologists studying sensory processing sensitivity have found that highly sensitive individuals process social and emotional cues at a neurological depth that most people simply never reach. This isn't imagination. This isn't anxiety misreading the room. This is your nervous system doing something genuinely remarkable, picking up on signals that others filter out entirely. The difficulty, of course, is that absorbing everyone else's emotional world is profoundly exhausting. You walk into a gathering feeling calm and leave feeling like you've been quietly carrying something that was never yours to hold. For years, you may have called this a flaw. It isn't. It is one of the most quietly profound forms of human intelligence there is. Sign 2. You need solitude not as a preference, but as a genuine biological necessity. And you've probably spent a lifetime feeling quietly guilty about that. Social situations that others move through effortlessly leave you needing hours, sometimes an entire day, to fully return to yourself. Research on sensory processing sensitivity consistently shows that highly sensitive individuals require significantly more recovery time after stimulating experiences, because their nervous systems process those experiences far more thoroughly. Every conversation, every decision, every sensory input is metabolized deeply rather than simply skimmed. This means that solitude for you is not withdrawal. It is not antisocial behavior. It is the necessary condition under which your mind heals, restores, and reconnects with itself. The tragedy is how many sensitive people have quietly internalized the message that needing this time makes them weak, or difficult, or somehow broken, when in truth, it makes them someone whose inner world is simply richer, more complex, and more deserving of quiet tending. Sign 3. You feel things before you can explain them. A sense of knowing that arrived before the evidence. A feeling in your body that something was right or deeply wrong long before your rational mind could catch up. This is not mysticism. Researchers studying intuition and cognitive processing have found that individuals with highly active nervous systems often integrate unconscious information far more rapidly, producing what feels like instinct, but is actually extraordinarily fast pattern recognition happening beneath conscious awareness. Your body has always been a kind of intelligence. The difficulty is that we live in a culture that demands explanation, proof, and visible logic. And so you have learned, slowly and painfully, to distrust the very signal that has guided you most reliably your entire life. Here's something worth staying with for a moment. These first 3 signs, absorbing others' emotions, needing solitude to restore, and feeling before knowing, rarely look like gifts from the outside. They are far more likely to have been called oversensitivity, introversion, or irrationality. And that mislabeling is precisely why so many gifted, sensitive people spend years wondering what is wrong with them, when the real question was always something else entirely. Sign 4. You have a profound relationship with beauty and meaning. This one surprises people, but one of the most consistent findings in research on highly sensitive individuals is an unusually deep response to aesthetic experience. A piece of music doesn't simply sound pleasant, it moves through you like something sacred. They land deeply. Elaine Aron's research on sensory processing sensitivity describes this as one of the genuine gifts of the sensitive nervous system, the capacity to be genuinely moved by the world in ways that others simply are not wired to experience. The world is not flat for you. It never has been. And while that depth can sometimes feel overwhelming, it is also the source of everything most alive in you. Sign 5. You carry an invisible weight of unspoken words. You edit yourself constantly. Before you speak, you have already considered how your words might land, how they might be misread, whether they are too much. You have spent years carefully calibrating how much of yourself to show, in which relationships, in which moments. This is not dishonesty. This is the deeply learned self-protection of someone who discovered early that their full self, their intensity, their depth, their questions, was sometimes too much for the people around them. Researchers studying emotional regulation in highly sensitive individuals consistently find elevated self-monitoring behaviors, a constant inner editing process that is exhausting in ways that are nearly impossible to explain to someone who has never experienced it. You are not too much. You have simply been in spaces that were too small. Sign 6. You grieve more deeply than others. Sometimes, even for things that were never yours to grieve. A stranger's loss moves you. An old memory surfaces and carries a weight that feels entirely fresh. You grieve the end of seasons, the passage of time, the slow drift of friendships that once felt permanent. This depth of grief is not pathology. It is the natural consequence of feeling everything more thoroughly. Research consistently shows that highly sensitive individuals process loss, in all its forms, at a significantly greater emotional depth and for significantly longer than the general population. This can feel isolating, particularly in a culture that places enormous value on moving on quickly. But your capacity to sit with grief, to honor it rather than rush past it, is also your capacity for genuine compassion. The two cannot be separated. Sign 7. You are drawn to depth in relationships, and small talk feels almost physically painful. Surface conversation doesn't just bore you, it leaves you feeling strangely more alone than if you had said nothing at all. You are not interested in what someone does for a living nearly as much as you are interested in what keeps them awake at night, what they are quietly afraid of, what they love so much it frightens them. This is not social awkwardness. Research on highly sensitive individuals consistently finds a strong preference for meaningful connection over social frequency. You would rather have one conversation that genuinely matters than 20 that leave no trace. And when you find someone willing to go there with you, into the real, the deep, the honest, something in you finally exhales. Sign 8. You have a complicated, tender relationship with your own past. Your memory is not simply a record, it is a living thing. Moments from years ago return with a vividness and emotional weight that can feel as immediate as the present. A conversation from childhood, a moment of humiliation you have never fully set down, a brief exchange of kindness that still warms you decades later. Psychologists studying autobiographical memory in highly sensitive individuals have found that emotional experiences are encoded with far greater depth and detail, meaning the past is never quite as past for you as it seems to be for others. This can make rumination a genuine struggle, but it also means you carry your experiences with a richness and a texture that shapes everything you create, everything you understand, and everyone you love. Sign 9. You have a deep, sometimes aching need to live a life that feels meaningful. Not successful in the way the world typically defines success. Meaningful. There is a difference, and you have always known it, even when you couldn't articulate it. The idea of spending your one life on something that doesn't genuinely matter to you, that thought is not just unappealing, it is almost unbearable. Research on sensory processing sensitivity consistently links high sensitivity with a strong orientation toward purpose, values, and inner coherence. You are not built for a life lived at the surface. You need your work, your relationships, your daily choices to connect to something larger. And when they don't, the disconnection registers not just emotionally, but physically, as a low, persistent weight that is very difficult to shake. Sign 10. You have never fully felt at home anywhere, and you carry that ache quietly. Not in most social spaces, not always in your own family, sometimes not even entirely within yourself. This feeling of being somehow between worlds, never quite fully belonging, is one of the most privately painful experiences of the highly sensitive person. And it is also one of the most universally shared among them. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are someone whose inner world is so particular, so textured, so alive, that finding spaces and people large enough to hold it fully is genuinely rare. But those spaces exist. Those people exist. And the fact that you have kept searching for them, quietly, persistently, across all these years, is itself one of the most telling signs of all. So here is the gentle truth that connects everything we have explored together. Being deeply sensitive and profoundly gifted is not a diagnosis. It is not a weakness to be managed or an inconvenience to be apologized for. At its core, it is a different way of being alive, more thoroughly, more tenderly, more honestly than most people ever allow themselves. And because that difference has so rarely been named with kindness, many sensitive people spend their entire lives carrying it like a burden, rather than recognizing it as what it truly is. So perhaps the most important thing you can take from this is simply permission. Permission to stop shrinking yourself to fit spaces that were never built for you. Permission to trust the depth you carry, because that depth is not the problem. It never was. It is, in fact, where everything meaningful in your life has always begun.